Our artists here, Anna, Katrine Senstad, and JG Thirlwell. Thank you. I'm Victoria Keddie. I'm going to just moderate tonight, but we're going to have a conversation about the work we see here, the work we have heard here, and hopefully we'll hear again post-conversation, and until the show's full run, which the show is up until April 18th, right? Yeah. So there's time. Revisit it. Yeah, so here we are. I'm going to start by introducing you both, and then we'll jump into things. So I'll start with Anna. So Anna is an internationally working visual artist, researcher, curator, and filmmaker. Her multidisciplinary practice spans over 2 decades and is anchored in the intersection of installation art, photography, film and video, neon sculpture, and light-based spatial installations, text-based art, land art, and specificity. Sorry for laughing, because there's a lot, but it's true. It's all true. With a focus on the phenomena of perception and the language of our cognitive system in response to the properties of light, sound, and color. She is concerned with semiotic narration, sensorial aesthetics, ethics, and criticism, the transformative and the transcendental ideas of art and philosophical practices. Senstad's long-term research and critical projects are concerned with the humanities, social political spaces, culture, and seeking an amalgamation for new folklore. Senstad has exhibited widely internationally since the mid-90s. Notable exhibits and exhibitions include Gallery Milk in Oslo, Sylvia Wald and Bochum Foundation, Gallery Floss and Schultz in Germany, temporal spaces here in New York. Biennials and triennials include the Baroque Art and Architecture Triennial in Belgium, the 55th and 56th Venice Biennales, respectively in 2013 and 2015. So you come with experience to the room. Jim as well, a composer, producer, performer based in Brooklyn, born in Melbourne. He moved to London in 78, that's 1978. Then relocated to New York in 1983, where he's been based ever since. As well as his own name, he works under many pseudonyms, including Anorexia, Fetus, Sordox, Storied Maximus, Baby Zizani, right? Zizani. Hydros Plus, Cling to Ruin, and Wise Blood. JG created the musical score for the Emmy-winning effects show Archer and for Adult Swim Cartoon Network show The Venture Brothers, for which he was nominated for an Annie Award. He has also scored several features and short films, as well as the first season of Dicktown. He has released over 40 albums. Okay, and if there is a common thread, his varied musical styles, it is a dramatic intensity and evocative cinematic quality. Thirlwell has also featured as producer, remixer, collaborator, and arranger for a wide variety of artists. Jim has completed commissions for Kronos Quartet, Bang on Can, Alarmal Sound, Zephyr Quartet, Dither, Jeffrey Ziegler, and William Basinski, and more. In 2010, he received a fellowship from the New York Foundation of the Arts in Sound Composition. He's created sound installations that have exhibited in many places, so I'll just name a few: Kaliningrad, Vienna, Gotland, and is a member of the Freak Out Sound Art Collective, which we'll touch on later. He performs live with the Chamber Ensemble, with his multi-channel electro-acoustic Silver Mantis project, and with his electronic project Zordox. So, okay, well, a round of applause. Let's welcome our artists here. Okay, and I think to start off the evening, I would love to talk about our current work that's here. The work itself is called Baroque Apocalypse, and I'd love to go into just the hows and whys of the naming of a work like this. Of course, it is evocative, and also how that is kind of painting the space, right? In terms of the title. So, Anne, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I think titles are very, very important to an entryway into offering us thoughts or a space to think about and to reflect. But it's also housing the artwork as a space houses the artwork. I also like to play with words, so and to create kind of new ideas based on word combinations. The idea of the Baroque is kind of the spectacle, so we're sort of in the spectacle of spectacles now in this era. And also it's kind of presents the idea of the usage of neon. So neon colors can be experienced as Baroque, you know, they're kind of lush and abundant and ornamental. And they also connotate commodity and material, the material world. The apocalypse, so combining that with the apocalypse. So the apocalyptic is the idea of the total transformative, or the radically transformative. So with that, I tied in the idea of subliminances, the scientific notion of how ether, when it's affected by a certain sound, it explodes, or it implodes, which is also a transformative event. So, and ether is, of course, is the material in the neon itself.
Okay, and so with this neon coming through, and we're watching a lot of that right now, it's not a new medium for you, but it's a choice medium for you. So how did you come about kind of getting involved with the material? How did you feel that it kind of reflects your practice, your thinking?
Well, I'm from the, what do you call it? Non-digital world.
Okay.
So I worked with film, you know, as material, you know, film and camera, and not digital film. So I think, and also working with like old film lights, like tungsten lights and fluorescent light tubes. So it's using light as a material in itself. That's not digital.
So, and then bringing in sound, then we bring in another kind of ephemeral medium here.
Yeah.
So in this choice of collaboration, how does this come together? How do you both say, okay, this is where we go?
Well, light and color and sound work in spaces of frequencies. So there's a kind of parallel world of expression there, or creative world. So it's just a matter of what form. So when you marry those, or when you combine those, you kind of, it's a fuller experience of it's a dimension. You create a fuller dimension of the artwork or of an experience.
So in speaking about frequencies, we have also the frequencies of human exchange here. Again, with the two minds at work. So I'll ask you then, in terms of coming in and into a space, this sculptural life, right? How do you start the process of building an environment this way?
You know, this.
You want to say?
No, that's it. This piece, it's kind of a continuum of two other pieces that Anne and I worked on. The first one was in Tallinn?
Radical Light in 2020.
Yeah, and then there was a kind of a small sequel, that's the Pink Walls.
Yeah, and then in between that we continued to Oasis in Denmark in the former World War II bunkers.
Yeah, so I feel like that we started this narrative like 5 years ago, and I'm trying to create a through line for all of these pieces, and you know, when we came to it, when we first came to it, we were talking about electricity.
Yeah, particles, electricity, very much of the scientific aspects of it, but also transformation of space and space itself into a whole new state of vastness of space.
Yeah, and I've done quite a few sound installations in a lot of different spaces, and usually I wasn't physically in the space in town when it started, but she sent me a lot of pictures, and that's where I use that as a jumping off point, and visualizing physically being in that space. I can't help but wanting to create an arc through the length of the piece that is probably going to be through the length of the installation, and coming from especially coming from the background of doing a lot of soundtrack work. Even if a piece is static, I tend to create a narrative and a through line through it, so there's a dramatic arc happening as well when you're immersed in it. And through a lot of the installations that I've worked in, I think of like the temporal aspect of it, of the person who's perceiving it, how long they're going to be in the space. I also, see a lot of stuff. I go to a lot of galleries and museums, and there are different levels that you can perceive things at, and I know that we live in a kind of a glimpse culture now, and that's how I experience things a lot. I think that you've also got to be creating a work that can unfold over a period of time, and create an immersive experience for the viewer, and then that's a bit more where I'm coming to this. But I think this also works for the glimpse culture as well, as it has to.
There's a meditative aspect of it, it kind of requires that you spend time in it, and then you let it unfold, and you are changed with it when the longer you are in the work. And the nail expands over time, so it's almost like it reflects, the effect reflects on how we behave, or affected when the longer we are in an artwork, and become immersed or part of the artwork.
Yeah, I think when I was inside of this work for a bit and taking time, there was something that kind of came to mind with regards to the dramaturgy of space in a way that work, of course, is taken from more theater. But in our speaking, there seems to be so much of this filmic presence, or this kind of cinema, or this presence of cinema, whether it's through certain variables or duration, of course, even the mediums of sound and light. So just going back again to the nature of collaborating, 2 months together, what did you feel in terms of building now that you've worked with a few projects now, quite serially, right? A handful, almost 8 or 9 times together, correct? Yeah. So what, in terms of the process, emerged rather naturally? And then were there any kind of surprising moments or realizations about each other's practice that kind of changed the works?
Well, I think once the works are installed with the sound, it's transformed totally. It becomes something new. It's sort of heightened to like a whole new level. I feel so. It's like, oh, I'm a spectator in my own work then. So I think that when the elements of the creative production are brought together and sort of mix, the result of that is a kind of a new state of the artwork than if it was, your sound could be on its own, or the sculpture could be on its own, but like when they put those together, it's a lot more powerful, I think.
Yeah, and I look at it in the context of creating a composition with sound design, as opposed to necessarily tonal elements. So the timbre is really important in the way that it's going to react in the space. So that's a consideration, like looking at the space, looking at the shape of the space, thinking about the resonance of the space. And so I first came up with a lot of building blocks, which I sort of spent a couple of days layering and trying combinations of. And then I actually went back to the other works that we'd done together and thought about it in the context of previous works, and then that led me to rethink what I've done and create something that had more of a spatial quality, because it was just, there was too much going on, and I wanted it to be something that it didn't feel like that it was overtaking the work, that it was becoming this cacophony. And then you've also got to think about the fact that there's people sitting in here all day and how much they might tolerate that. Because I've been, a lot of the installations that I've done, especially with Freak Out, the Sound Art Collective, we've done them in museums, but also in other, off the beaten track spaces, and usually there's going to be someone there, and so I've spent a lot of time in those spaces, and there'll be like one sound that comes up like every 13 minutes, and it's like something. You can't put that sound in. I'm going to drive someone crazy about every 13 minutes. So I kind of think about that as I want there to be. I want it to be engaging and have a relationship to the space, and that's really important.
I think that also speaks to the meditativeness of the work, that there's a sublime aspect to both the sound and the minimal structure. The work is conceived as a structure in a whole way, and it's not, it's large, but it's not like a huge mass of matter. It's quite, even though it's solid light and solid glass, it's still quite ephemeral in itself. And the sound carries that lightness as well, and quietness. So it's present, but it's sort of, there's this quiet, sublime, meditative space.
Yeah, you make me think about the exhibition text, actually, where there's this passage that says, "Through the neon colonnade, we're invited to experience the primordial, where light and sound frequencies touch upon the very atoms of our being."
Well, it's electrical currents and sound. We have, pockets in our head where sound resonates, the nervous system. So it's sort of also like, when you can hear your blood move around or something like that.
So I'd just like to revisit the Freak Out group, if you could just give a quick introduction to that collaboration anyway, because now we're associated with duck sounds, but I don't think that wasn't the only thing that happened. But maybe also to think about as we could move into audience and intention for listening.
Yeah. Well, Freak Out was a sound art collective that was founded by and curated by Wald, who's a Swedish artist, and he invited 12 different sound artists, composers. Myself, Jakob Kierkegaard, Vijay Nilsson, Tony Groman, Brandon Bell, who else? Franz Palmasol, Mike Harding from Touch. Getting some Maya Erstad, Jana Vinderen, and the idea was that we sliced up the frequency spectrum into 12 slices. So the highest frequency was say between 10,000 and 20,000, and then the lowest frequency was down to 30 to 50, something like that. And so there were 12 slices, and every time we did an installation, you got a different slice of the frequency spectrum, and then you went up each time. So you had to create within this part of the frequency spectrum, and then when the piece was completed, they were all played back, and each piece was at a different length. And so it created something using all of the entire frequency spectrum, but in discrete compositions, which melded together at different lengths, so it never really looped. It was 12 looping sections, and then it really intersected again. And so we did that in a lot of spaces. The first one was in Copenhagen, the second was in Oslo, I think, maybe.
Yeah, I think I saw that. I think I was there.
Yeah. And then we did Paris, we also did like Chiang Mai and Morocco and Berlin and Vienna, and so we did 12 times. And so by the end of the 12 times, everyone had done the frequency, and then it took many years for it to be completed. So one of the things I learned through that, I mean, we did it in a lot of different spaces. In Vienna, we did it in the third man sewer, and we did it in these kind of underground vaults in Berlin, and then in Paris we did it at Centre Communiste, which is a really interesting architectural kind of classic, and then in other, we did it in museums as well. And so when we did it in Stockholm, for example, we did it in the Modern Art Museum there, in probably about 5 huge discrete rooms, but it was a 48-hour event, and people were staying overnight, and for 5 hours, just lying there and experiencing it in different rooms with different colors, different sounds intersecting. Sometimes the sounds were together, sometimes they were discrete rooms. And that had a big impact on my ideas about spatialization. Now most of the performances I do are in surround sound. And I've done several surround installations of my own, and I'm really interested in working in an immersive environment with sound. I released a 5.1 album about 15 years ago, I think. I feel like it's a medium that hasn't really been embraced. It's very niche,
This be the finish? Or
Yes, I conceptualize different sort of ideas, and now it's the Baroque Apocalypse, and previously the music for plutocracy or working with the perceptual. So and they all have the structure. I mean, they have different compositions, spatial compositions according to the space they're in and the history of it. But there's always a kind of perspective. So you have the enveloping horizon and the what do you call it? The rising light. So yeah, the verticality of light here. So I feel as an artist through my journey, I work through chapters, and then I work with like color and space. In essence, that's what I've done. Like that's my language. But for this specific series, I've created 9, and when I created the first one, I said I'm going to make 10. There will be 10 in the series. So it's almost like this phase is coming to a close, but it would go to something else, So it's a matter of, I think as an artist, it's very important to not repeat yourself constantly, it's easy to just sort of go to, it's very important to challenge yourself and to go into uncharted territory, the unknown, and to challenge your creativity, to push it and to really explore that vastness you have there. So I think it's almost like setting kind of not limits, but like, okay, this amount of time is that chapter, and then you go to something else that you don't know yet.
So So in kind of revisiting the titles of collaborations anyway, I'm not sure if that's exactly the Elements series, but I had mentioned before this kind of dramaturgy, but now I'm thinking that there's the dramaturgy of words here. So we have color, kinesthesia, the sugarcane labyrinth, the locker plant projections, swamp, time beyond place, radical light, the pink room has no walls, and Baroque Apocalypse. And I mean, these are wonderful to get lost in. So are these an encapsulation of the collaborative entity, or is this the starting point that feeds the work, where it goes? Does the title come first or last?
I think the title is quite early, like it doesn't define what the piece will be manifested as, but I do start with a kind of theme. But I mean, for like the sugarcane labyrinth, that was agricultural land art work in Louisiana. I worked quite a bit post Katrina, so it had to do with sustainability of farming culture, small culture, and also there's a problem with the decades now from the oil industry, the erosion of the fast and quick erosion of the coast, the Louisiana coast and Mississippi. So farms are being affected by that, and sugarcane is also a natural wall for wind, for strong winds, and sugarcane is being pushed out by large industries anyway. So I worked with a farmer, sugarcane farmer, and we grew a huge labyrinth, like almost 2 acres. Large labyrinth that you could walk inside, kind of like walkways like here. And then I documented it to create a short film, and invited Jim to create sound work for it. So that was, and that we showed that in right after in 2011 at the Canadian Museum of Nature, and then it's been shown in other institutions after. And that was a 5:1 surround sound piece.
So there is a site specificity.
Yeah, exactly.
Work. And so how did that affect the sound design, being inside of the field, or thinking about that in terms of immersion?
Oh, that. Well, I didn't go there. The sugarcane labyrinth I really approached as a.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Mark. I guess there's 2 questions I have. One was, was there, and if so, what was informing the choices you made in terms of the variances or why the color patterns were specifically this way? And I guess the second question is more about palette itself, whether these gases were they fixed? Is the gases that you chose, were they always going to result in these specific colors, or are there variations on them?
Yeah, I don't choose the gases. The gases are the different gas combinations depending on what color. For example,
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, so the cobalt blue uses this amount of that gas, and that's like neon or argon. But the glass tubes are blue. They're coated blue on the inside, while the green ones, the glass is white, like white. So, but I used colors here that are so in harmony, like blue and yellow, and then pink and green. But then they sort of cold colors and warm colors. I put those in combination too. And when you put pink and green here together, pink and yellow, the yellow appears slightly kind of greenish. So in combination, they also change. So there's a narration in the color compositions. So they also compose in relation to each other in sort of pattern. So as if you would see like a geometric artwork, like yeah. So, but it's in volume, in space. I've also worked monochromatically. So also work with like the fullest blue you can get, what is the fullest red you can get. And that's also very exciting. And those are a lot more experienced, those neon installations with only monochromatic neon installation. They're experienced a lot more intense. While when you have multiple colors, it's kind of like, it's almost like it plays on your whole sensory system. You know, you go through like blue is calming, it slows your pulse, and then pink and it's sort of like, it sort of raises your blood, or pink and red raises your blood temperature. So it's, they experience very, very differently according to what colors that are presented. But here, instead of, like I work with multi-chromatic installations with 6, 7 colors. These are 4 main ones, but the thing about neon as well is that I also work with like the width of the glass, the neon. So the thicker the glass, the wider diameter, the softer the light is, and softer the color is. And then on the wall neon, those are thinner, and that light is more intense. So it's more like a slicing. It slices through the wall, so it sort of reduces the wall to this sort of surrounding horizon.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the audience?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you consider this kinetic? Like, I mean, I've heard the word kinetic. Kinesthesia.
Kinetic is moving.
So it's different. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but still, would you consider it kinetic? Would you consider this kinetic sculpture?
It's more participatory. Experiential and participatory.
Yeah, it's not physically moving.
Kinetic is things that move,
Right.
like a machine.
Yeah, it's not, but just the idea.
Well, it's
of,
alive. It's alive because of, like, the natural gases are alive.
Yeah, and the
electricity
sound
is alive.
illusion,
And the sound is
and the movement of your own
Right.
viewer, the viewer participation with this.
So maybe conceptually kinetic.
Yeah.
Perception, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's temporal.
Sense, yeah. Yeah.
Sensoral as well.
Temporal.
Temporal and
Sensorial.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, in terms of, thinking about category, and, there's all of the variables that attribute to movement, and even by way of physics and everything else that are involved here, but yet the aspect of something moving and participating for you tends to be more of the kinetic embrace, and we're here moving with and in tandem with, and then suddenly now we're moved into this different category. I think it's really interesting now.
Yeah. There's a space between, like, the kinetic, where things actually move, and then the experience of movement. Even though it's static.
and reference back to kinetic sculpture. Back in the day.
Yeah, because kinesthesia, that is awareness of your own movement. Like I work with synesthesia. That was the first kinesthesia, and then synesthesia. So where you replace all the conditions or in your brain, where sensory system, where you, for example, you can see a number with a color. You exchange, or with you can taste the color, or like you see a color and then you feel something specific that is very profound,
Yeah, I think something, as we're talking and kind of looking at the work here, and of course listening, we're inside of the archetypal like white box gallery environment, but yet we're also in the other kind of black box. We're inside of the cinema space as well, which we were talking about before. And it makes me think a little cybernetically about what ourselves as the audience becomes, and how much we take in and move with and in tandem with. And we kind of become a bit of the black box ourselves too. So we're kind of working and moving and listening, and there's the sweet spot where we're dedicated to, and then we move again. It's really quite beautiful to know, or to think actually, how important the variable of human presence is inside of these works.
Yeah, it's not passive. something that, when I say it's not passive, I mean, you are, as an experiencer of the project, you are, you also become the subject of the work as well. You become the person that's getting, that is having the laser pointed at their head and is having the frequencies imposed upon them. Because when you think of this is, I feel like there's a difference between a film installation and going to the cinema, and I feel like an installation work is something where the artist can impose their will on the viewer in a different way, as opposed to entertainment.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's all I've got.
Thank you, Victoria.